Stay tuned for a year-end recap and my thoughts on what to be expecting in 2020. Hi folks, welcome to Set Apart Homestead, the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. So it's the end of 2019. Yeah, I'm that old that I can remember the 1900s. My son asked me a couple of weeks ago, Dad, were you born in the 17th century or the 18th century? I thought, man, I am old, aren't I? Anyways, so we're coming to the end of another decade and the beginning of the roaring 20s again. And I thought we could do a little video on recapping kind of what's happened over the past year and looking forward to 2020. And for start off with, I'll start with me personally. Life has had a lot of ups and downs this year. Probably more so, well, definitely, I'll say this, absolutely. 2019 brought in the biggest changes, good and bad, in my life than in the 40 plus years that I've been alive. I talk about that in detail, well, more detail, over on my Patreon page. I don't like throwing a lot of personal information out here on YouTube because everyone in the world can see it and I don't know. And on Patreon, I have a little bit more, control about who accesses it. So there's that. And there's been a lot of really good and really bad things happening this year. But I've made it to the end of the year. I survived. And I think I've talked to a lot of people, 2019 seemed to be a year like that for a lot of people, a lot of drastic changes. And maybe everyone says that every year, who knows? But it does seem like 2019 seems to be going out with a bang of a lot happening. And I think that we could, make that argument, politically and just in our society and in the world around us, that it seems to have had a lot of big changes and a lot of important things happen. 2020, this next up and coming year for myself and for this channel, you're going to see a lot of new things happening, and I hope that you'll enjoy it. I hope it's good stuff. I know that, on something like this with YouTube, if for any of you that know anything more than just watching a video, maybe you know others that have a YouTube channel, or you have your own, or maybe it's not even YouTube. Maybe you have a kind of Facebook page or something. You can't please everyone, and I know that. I know when I make a video, not everyone's going to like it, or if I do something, it's not going to make everybody happy. But there's a lot of big changes coming up. I have a new website that is pretty much done. I've got a little fine-tuning going on and some content that I'm creating to put on it. And so I will be talking about that more officially, probably in the next week or two is what I'm thinking. And so some new exciting things there that I'm trying to do. When I started this channel, I started it with one of the goals of it not promoting myself. I actually don't like that. I don't like a lot of attention, so that's never been a goal of this channel. But it's to bring together the homesteading, off-grid, self-sufficient, lifestyle and the prepping community lifestyle, preparedness, survival, that kind of stuff together. And give them a platform to learn, to share, communicate, make connections. And I can't do that all just with YouTube, obviously. And so that's where this website's kind of come into play, of being able to do that. And so I've got a lot of ideas in my head and on paper, and some of them I'm actively working on them. So I think 2020 is going to be a big year for this channel and for those of you watching. So I ask you to stay tuned, and if this is your first time watching, or if you haven't yet already, go ahead and click the subscribe button below and that little bell off to the side, and that way you'll get notifications, because most of the things that I do, even if it's for the website or anything else, I'll make announcements. I'll keep YouTube updated, you folks on YouTube, of what's going on. So there's that. Well, what about the world around us? You know, and trying to come up with some thoughts of like what's going to be happening or what could happen, what 2020 might hold for us. That's a very long list, and it's not something I could easily narrow it down for time for this video. So I think we're going to start seeing more increase in food prices. We've already been on a trend. If you look at a line graph, you can see that food prices are increasing. They have over the last couple of years, not, you know, drastically, but they're increasing. And with some of the things that's happened this past year, with massive flooding in the heartland, the Midwest, and where most of your farming is done, the big portion of your farming is done, and then with some of the more climate change stuff that's happening, the solar minimum, the grand solar minimum that we're starting in. I think you're going to start seeing food prices increase. So for those preppers out there, one thing that's been talked about for years in the prepper community is that, buy food, because right now it's so cheap. It's so cheap. You can buy a 50-pound bag of, wheat berries or rice or beans for really not a lot of money. And that's still true, but I don't know that we're going to have that benefit, that luxury actually, for very much longer. So if you're new to it, or if you know that you're not where you need to be when it comes to food, you probably need to get on the ball, because it's very possible, the way things are looking, it may not last very much longer of being able to get cheap food cheaply. So think about that. I have my own little prediction. I think that ammunition prices are going to start going up. It seems to be a pattern of when it comes to gun control or purchasing, the demand for firearms. One of the things that happens is the scarcity of ammunition. And the gun control advocates, they know it's more difficult to pass laws on gun control, but passing restrictions on ammunition productions is actually quite easy. So, and we're already seeing that, big stores like Walmart are either not selling at all or restricting the sale of ammunition, which Walmart, whether you like them or not, they did at one time were the largest, retailer of ammunition. Other sporting goods stores that at one time were big sellers of guns and ammo are now not selling them or restricting them. So I would say ammunition prices are going to continually go up, and we're going to start seeing less and less of it available. So if that's something that you still need to be stocking up on, I would do it while you still can. And that's just my personal opinion. I don't really have data or facts to probably back that up, so you can take that one with a grain of salt. Then looking at things, just kind of the mood of the world around us. In case you haven't noticed and have been living in a cave for a while, the level of violent acts here in the United States is on the rise, I believe. Not necessarily individual of like, two guys getting into it and fighting, but acts of terroristic and hate-filled violence. When it comes to attacking a group of people for their beliefs or their way of life, or even the government, passing laws that, might focus on a particular group is on the rise. We're seeing, we're seeing violent acts from, radical organizations on the rise against individuals and against other groups. We're seeing acts of violence against religious groups drastically on the rise. So we're seeing, violent acts almost daily against Jewish communities and against Christian communities. And of course, all of you, I'm sure, are well aware of the church shooting just a few days ago in Texas. And, I wanted to talk just for a minute on that one. Number one, remember the two parishioners that lost their lives in that. But here is a sign, a perfect example of what you and I, have been saying for years, that gun control doesn't work, and that actually having a law-abiding citizen with access to one does. And you could not create a more perfect scenario to prove that. It's unfortunate that 2 innocent souls lost their lives in that. But you had a guy that legally should not have been in possession of a firearm, that there were already laws in place, gun control laws in place, to prevent him from owning, possessing, and using a firearm that did not stop him. And you had an individual and several other individuals that were legally possessing a firearm and that had good training. And might I add that the gentleman that took down the shooter, for those of you that really understand firearms and self-defense tactics, I think would admit that this was something like out of a movie. The accuracy, the control, the mental clarity that it took for him to make that shot under those conditions was something out of a movie scene. And he did it. And so I don't know that you could come up with a better example of using a firearm for protection than that particular case. And then we have another, a perfect example. In New York last week, the man that entered the rabbi's home and with a machete and stabbed and cut up a bunch of people. And then just a couple of days ago, there was some type of remembrance ceremony or of some sort done there at that home because of that. And fellow Jewish members in the community surrounded that home bearing arms, AR-15s and sidearms, to protect that home from any violent acts that might happen while they were having a service in the home because of the violence that had happened. And here we see a form, basically, to put it plain and simple, that was a militia. It was not organized in any way. It was members in the community that came together, and not all of them were Jewish, but there were definitely several within their own Jewish community and then others outside that Jewish community that came armed openly to protect that home. That's what they're there for. That's what they're about. They're also about what's going on in Virginia, where you've got government threatening to come in and take over and take your guns and take your rights away. And you've got people willing to stand up and say, you're not going to do that, and we will use these said firearms to protect ourselves from your tyranny. That is also what they're there for. And so these things that we're seeing, it's funny how every few years the guns come back, and the gun control people come back, and each time they take a little bit more away. This time, in past years when they come popping their heads up with new gun control legislation, it's under this, guise of, well, we're not really wanting to take your guns away. We're just wanting to, to make it safe for criminals and things like that. This time, it's different. This time, they're very openly, blatantly saying, we're here to take your guns. Former Democrat candidate, a presidential candidate out of Texas, Beto O'Rourke, flat out said, we're here to take your AR-15s. We're here to take them. That's what we're going to do. It's kind of odd that this same guy, after this shooting in his own state of Texas, in the church shooting, actually made a statement saying that, this is a perfect example of why we need to have gun control. Look what this guy did, went in and shot up this church, and neglecting to mention the fact that an individual with a firearm and several other individuals with firearms put that shooter down in less than 6 seconds after it started. But they don't care about facts, do they? They only care about their little bleeding heart issues to take your rights away. So we see, guns coming back as a hot topic again. And I'm sure that'll be a hot topic in the 2020 election, which is another thing that's happening this year. And I think that, it's going to be a mudslinging election. And there's a lot of thoughts and predictions that it could spin off a civil war before or afterwards, depending on who wins and who loses. And my personal opinion of that is that I can see that as a possibility. I'm not going to make predictions on what I think will happen, but I could definitely see that being something, at least increased acts of violence leading up to and thereafter of the election. And the more and more that happens, the closer we get to potential martial law, or calling in foreign help from other nations, depending on how bad it gets. So there's a lot of stuff there that's happening. So 2020, I think, is going to be a very big year. And I know we can look back and we could say that about every year when it comes to, the things that are happening that could drastically change the world as we know it, or change our nation as we know it. I think 2020 is a very pivotal year, and I think it's going to, not that haven't picked out the path that we're going to be on, but I think 2020 is going to be kind of that last-ditch effort to finally choose which path this nation takes, whether it be towards more freedom or completely the opposite direction. And whether or not the big one bursts during 2020 or not, I think it's definitely on that way. Of course, the financial markets, for the last 12 months, there's been predictions that it's on the verge, and just in the last week or so, a lot of the financial experts are warning, man, 2020 recession is like it's on the way. Some of them are saying that it's already here, and some of them are saying that it's going to be not just a recession, but a depression starting in 2020, that the bubble will finally burst in the financial markets. If you look at bond prices or stuff like that, it's all indicative of a serious financial collapse coming within the next 6 to 12 months. Will it happen? Who knows? But it's definitely something that we should all be aware of. So I think for those of us preppers, 2020 is a busy year, and we got to keep our nose to the grindstone. For those of us that are just homesteaders, which I kind of think homesteading and prepping is one thing, you got to continue get things going on your homestead. Get yourself more ready. Equipment bought that you can afford. Learn more self-sufficient skills. Those are going to be so critical. Yes, the supplies that you have are important, but the skills that you're developing and practicing and honing and perfecting those skills, creating good muscle memory, is so critical in taking care of yourself and your family. And so you may not have a whole lot of time yet to practice it before you actually have to start using it. So get on board. If you've been lax in that area, you need to get on board with more practicing, developing your skills, expanding your knowledge base, and strengthening that muscle memory on the things that you need to do, because we really never know what tomorrow holds and what we have to look forward to, or how much longer we have. We could have decades, we could have days, and that's why we do what we do as preparedness-minded people. And so all I'm saying is that 2020 has the potential. I'm not making a prediction. I'm just saying that 2020 has the potential to be a devastating year, or to bring about a lot of risky and dramatic and even catastrophic things. So I think it's time to stop talking and start walking, and putting some action to the things that we talk about. I know many of you do. There are some of you that I'm envious of the lifestyle that you live and the way that you prep and everything, that watch this channel. But I think when it comes to something like this, we can never be too prepared. Any of you watching, any one of you that would be considered an expert, I'm sure there are areas that you can increase. And some of you are brand new and beginning and haven't really done anything. You've got a big learning curve, but you need to get on the ball and start getting your lives ready and getting your home ready, because things aren't getting any better. All right, I think that's my kind of wrap up for the whole year and for next year predictions. Not anything, I haven't really predicted anything. It's just thoughts. So don't hold me to things. No, that's fine. Leave your comments and questions below. There's getting to be a lot, so I'll be honest, it's hard for me to keep up on them. But as I can, I jump in and respond. So thank you all for watching. I appreciate you guys have given me a wonderful 2019. Made it very exciting, and you know, keep listening. I ask for as long as I put out content, at least I guess as long as it's worth watching. So feedback is always welcome and encouraged, and I look forward to 2020 for those of you here at Set Apart Homestead. I'll catch you in the next video.